Our next expert is Mr. Damian Kupczyk, and he's going to present a project which essentially aims to fight stereotypes that children with disabilities face. And they try to provide information and group activities for young people so that they can get to know these people with disabilities. But anyway, let me give the floor to Mr. Kupczyk, President of the Czepczynski Family Foundation, so that he can present to us the ABC of empathy. Thank you very much. The director of our organisation is here in the room, and on both of our behalf, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our 10 years of experience with children. In the past, it was said that children who came out of school needed to be able to read, write and understand, but now things have changed, and so do children's and young people's skills. And so that's why there are now 3 other things that young people need to be able to do. They need to understand financial matters, but they also need to be able to work with their emotions appropriately. We as an organisation essentially work on providing support in education. Schools are the place where children spend most of their lives, and when I was a school head, I used to open up at 6:30 in the morning, and I used to close the school at 10 at night. And there were many children who were with me when I opened the school in the morning and were still there when I closed it at night. The previous speaker spoke a great deal about childhood development, and I am also an expert in child development. And we often talk about, for example, re-socialization in cases where we've been able to help children through education. I mean, essentially, children learn from their parents between the 1st and 3rd year of their lives. They build relations with their parents and family members, and without these relations, we can't understand or feel empathy, because we'll see adults as a risk factor. The risk is to think that an adult could be a danger to us. So that's why we need to involve parents and make them aware of how important it is to build these links and spend time with their children before the child is then sent to school. And then, when the child goes to school, we continue to develop the child or help the child develop, but we do that on the basis of what's been done by the parents. Children need to understand that the person sitting next to them is actually a human being, isn't simply a being on a screen. And we can build links with human beings. I mean, we're social beings, and that's why we think in structural terms when we look at what we do. I was pleased to hear that every child has a right to education and also the right to be included in education. Because most inclusive education currently really only relates to buildings. So children should be able to access the buildings. But what we're missing from this idea of inclusive education is the idea of ensuring that every child is able to access their full potential and develop fully. There has been talk of potential here, and in our work we have to understand the potential of each and every child, and we have to work with teachers in order to do that. Now, we as an organisation try and work with everyone. We've worked with the OECD, the European Commission, a whole series of organisations, large or small, businesses as well. And the reason for that is because we need to take a holistic approach to education. We need to be aware that children aren't some kind of a product which suddenly arrives at school, and then the school has a responsibility during school time, and then the parents are responsible when they go home, and then they'll be responsible for themselves. No, we're responsible for educating children, and we try and support education. And I think what we do will have a major impact on the world as a whole. Because we're not talking about ourselves here, we're talking about our children, and they're the ones who are going to decide on the future. I would like to see the whole world be more full of empathy, and I'd like to see young people be more full of empathy than we are. Now, when it comes to our educational projects, we've created a whole series of tools, and we've based ourselves on childhood development and methods used by teachers and academics. I'm going to talk about the book ABC of Empathy a bit later on, but that's something that we have created. But our project is now present in over 3,000 schools and kindergartens in Poland. However, that's still nowhere near enough. Every child deserves and has the right to receive empathy and also to feel empathy, and that's why we want to create structural approaches to all of this. We also need to recall the fact that it's important to work in hospitals, because there are children who go to school in hospital, so we're present in hospitals as well. And then there are also many children from Ukraine who are now in Poland, and they need support as well. We also have contact with experts from all over the world, representatives from 56 countries at the moment, and these are experts in empathy and inclusive education. And all these experts always tell us that what's being done isn't enough, that young people need support. We need more experts. Well, we have the experts, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We obviously try to share our good practice and ensure that our projects reach as many people as possible. So that's why we're particularly grateful for this opportunity, and we hope that you'll be interested in our projects too. There's certainly a great deal of interest in today's meeting. I see that Professor Lewandowska, the national consultant, is here, and then the director from the Ministry of Education, which also works on inclusive education in Poland. So there is a great deal of interest in this subject. But what can we do to ensure that we move from words to action? I mean, what we need to do is we need to be brave. Currently, inclusive education is something that's more talked about than acted upon. And we're not only talking about disabilities here, of course. I mean, we're all different. We all need empathy. So we need to base ourselves on an inclusive education system, and we need to think about it in the widest possible terms, because we all need empathy. We all face situations where we face misunderstanding with regard to what we do and who we are, and that can often make us feel excluded, and that means that the way in which our brain functions changes. It changes the way in which we relate to other people, and it creates all sorts of problems, including depression, for example. Moving on to the book now, ABC of Empathy. Now, it wasn't written by a group of people who sat down and thought about what they should write. I mean, writing a book's not difficult, but what's difficult is writing a book that children can relate to, that's linked to their experiences, that can create a connection with children. And we did that not by thinking about disabilities, but by thinking about requirements. The book talks about the requirements that a person has. For example, if they have a disability, I mean, we talk about asthma, diabetes, cancer as well. And we do have children with those illnesses in schools. And so we have to think about those children. We have to think about what their requirements are and what their limits are. So we talk about mental disabilities, physical disabilities as well, but also behavioral conditions such as autism, hyperactivity. ADHD. Currently in Poland, there's no teacher who can say, I have no children with any specific requirements in my class. No, every child needs to be understood individually. We have to understand exactly how they function. Now, we work with a whole series of organisations in Poland, large and small, because we base what we do on the experiences of experts. And I was pleased to hear that we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel from our previous speaker, because it's true. There are millions of euros that are invested in various projects, which then basically are just put aside, or the projects simply don't get completed because there's not quite enough funding available to set up a website or buy the domain name or whatever it is. So we have to be aware that these projects and experiences that shouldn't be wasted. These are opportunities that we need to take advantage of. And that's why we need to create experts, parents, yes, but actually anyone can be an ambassador for the importance of empathy. I mean, saying we don't have enough experts basically means not taking your own responsibility on board, because the fact is that I could build a more inclusive world around me, not simply blame other people for the problems. So what's the situation? Well, let's look at the situation in Poland. Now, very often we hear people in Poland saying that we need experts, and it's up to experts to ensure empathy and deal with people's mental conditions. But we have 500 childhood psychiatrists. We have around 18,000 psychologists. But that's not nearly enough to create this kind of utopia. We have about 500,000 teachers. They're trained, they have classrooms, they have buildings, and they're the ones who deal with our children for at least 18 hours of contact time a week. So they're the ones who need to be involved in supporting children. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the remit of teachers anymore. So what we did when we ran our project, or when we started running our project, we thought, well, no, we have to give teachers the tools to deal with these issues. It's not just up to experts. And when we started talking about inclusive education, people said to us, no, it's psychologists and psychiatrists who need to deal with these issues. They're the experts. But no, now we have over 3,000 schools who are dealing with inclusion and empathy because they have the tools to do it. We don't have a lot of time in all of this because if you look at the numbers of suicide attempts, you can see that they've increased significantly among children of all ages. So between 7 and 12 years old, you can see the increase on the slide, and the same for teenagers between 13 and 18 years. So, and another point is that depression has increased greatly among young people. And so that's why we so much need empathy. Empathy reduces stigmatization and can reduce the levels of depression. So we need to play with children. Patience is important when you're dealing with children. I mean, we as adults see dangers when children are playing, but what we have to do is put ourselves in the shoes of children and see the world through their eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want more information on our materials, we have copies available here, and Margareta and I would be very happy to answer any questions you may have. And on behalf of the Foundation, I'd like to thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to speak to you today. We together have to take responsibility for children. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie prezesie.
Thank you.